Zuke Smith of Zuketunes, excuse me. The last time we saw each other was at the Launch Music Conference 2017.
Right.
I hope you're doing well during everything with the, everybody staying in quarantine and such. Yeah. So, I mean, what have you been doing to keep busy? I mean, are you still working with students online and such?
Absolutely.
Like all the time?
And yeah, I mean, I've been teaching online for about 10 years anyway, so it really wasn't different for me to keep going this way. But to have all of my students now online, right. So some of them had to get used to doing it. The local students, the one that live near me in the regional area, that usually come like here. Mm-hmm. But it's been great. I mean, I love it. I love to teach, so I don't care if I'm online or in person. I just, let's do it.
Yeah, it's a passion that some people have, and that's obviously something you've been doing for a good amount of time. Do you prefer like in person? I mean, is it a completely different process? I know it is for drums. You know what I mean? Is it
a different process? Yes and no, but I get some things out of doing it online more so than live because I'm really focused with the student, and the student is focused on me because you're so close to the camera, and they're usually in a safe space. They're usually in a private room when they take the online lessons. So they seem to be they feel more comfortable with their vulnerability when they're online. When they're, I usually teach in my house, and I live on a lake, so I have them facing the lake, so it's vibey and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah, and but that's, it's a bigger space. There's people in the neighborhood they hear, so sometimes if a noise startles them, they'll get out of focus. So in some ways, I kind of like online better.
Right.
As long as the feed doesn't fold.
That is true. I mean, I personally have a couple students myself, so I mean, they kind of wanted to implement online lessons, and I'm not really I can't find an idea, because especially if they want to play something, whether it's on a pad or a drum set, and they're already at the level of doing, the intermediate level of drumming and percussion. So them playing drums, and I'm trying to like say, hey, wait, stop, good job. Like it's just very complicated. So we're gonna get back to probably doing that soon. I mean, it seems like if we keep our distance and do all the safety procedures and such. So
I mean, it would be good if all students used a mic and an interface when they came to a lesson, but they all don't have that, so sometimes they're just using their internal mic, and it sounds like, or it goes in and out like, da da da.
I could only imagine. That's so cool. And how long have you been doing this for? Because I see it that your whole website is, filled with students, and they have their own profiles. And I've never seen anything like that. I think that's extremely creative to do that, to show their talents.
I want my students to all be successful. They come from all different kinds they're following all different kinds of styles and genres, and I just love them all. And I want to see them move forward. But professionally teaching, I'm going to say it's just a good 12 years. Because I've gone through a lot of stuff, as everybody does. By the time you're my age, you go through a lot of stuff. And prior to that, so here's the quick story. Here's the 2-minute, the 2-minute thing. Okay, so growing up, with rock and polkas in my house, whatever, and
that's a good combination.
It was a great combination. My brothers went to Woodstock, and my dad played accordion. I mean, like, how cool is that?
I'd love to live in '69 and just hanging out and just smoking a couple things and just hanging out. You know what I mean?
That's exactly what it was like. And I studied classical piano at the time. Anyway, but I was really into rock. Did the rock thing in high school. The bands and the Joni Mitchell on the guitar, and doing the blah blah blah. Go to college, went to Indiana University. Studied opera there. Hung out with jazzers there. That was great. Blah, blah, blah. Did bands, lots of bands, jingles, da-da-da, some record dates, and then had a kid, got married, had a kid, husband went on the road. I started doing some stuff at home, stopped doing a lot of the music stuff, but I was teaching piano. Then age 40, I get breast cancer. Dun, dun, dun. And so
God bless you for, getting through that.
Yeah, thank you. But I'll tell you, I would not be the teacher I am today if I did not go through that, because I lost my voice completely from going through chemo. So I have a personal understanding of what it's like when you don't have your voice and you're really frustrated, because it took a while to get it back again. So anyway, fast track this. So I found the teacher that I found at the time was Brett Manning, who he's based in Nashville, and he looked like a slacker to me. Like he's sitting, like he had this hat on, he's like doing this stuff, and I'm like, who is this guy, right? And I started doing his exercises, and I'm like, actually, this is working on my voice. I don't know what the hell he's doing, but it's working. It's nothing, it was very different than anything that I had studied. So it was odd. So I flew down to Nashville over a year's time, and certified with him to learn his technique. And so that was in 2008. So I would say 2008 is really when I took it really seriously to teach others how to sing. And then since then, I've studied many, many other methods as well, but I still incorporate a lot of what Brett taught.
Your background is, it's just the genres, there is no end to, what you've learned over the years too, the experience, like the interest of every single genre from opera. Opera is something that is a specific taste in itself. Like I do enjoy some, not most, but like I can't tell you one opera act off the back of my head besides I can't, you know what I mean? But
that's cool.
Right.
Just as long as you open your ears and listen at least once.
Right.
To everything. That's
Absolutely.
all you have to do. You don't have to like everything, but I'm listening from a different perspective now anyway. I didn't like opera when I was young. When I was a teenager, it was like, oh my God, what is this? And it wasn't until I went to college and studied with an opera teacher, and then I felt the resonance and heard the resonance of my voice. And I'm like, oh, this is what opera does. This is pretty wild, And then I had the opportunity to, in the 80s, I studied with Marty Lawrence. And at that time, Marty Lawrence taught a lot of opera students, but then he was coaching rockers. He coached Bon Jovi at the time that I was studying with him.
Yeah, so all local natives in New Jersey. Yeah, okay.
Yep. Yeah. And so that was really cool. I've had fun. I've really had fun. I've had great mentors. That's what I love passing on. I've had the opportunity to study and apprentice under amazing coaches, of all facets. And I just want to share that.
And that's a great opportunity. And especially because you're saying mentor, there's a huge difference between a mentor and a teacher. And the mentor basically, adapts to the students, personality in general, and kind of, molds them into who they want to be in itself. And a teacher they basically teaches the lessons and then moves on. So my mentor, he has really kind of sat back and wanted to see what my interests were, and then how he could, do his best to implement so many techniques that I could move forward with doing it in itself. And he stuck with, if I had any questions, like I just, give him a shout and like, hey man, like I have a question about blah, blah, blah. He's like, yeah, sure. And he calls me back and does all that. And there's, some teachers don't do that. That's why they're teachers and they're not mentors. But no, because and the apprenticeship too, that's a whole gift in itself. So the experience is obviously there. And, have you gone and put yourself into certain acts in itself, like opera or singing in a musical act of some sort? Like,
oh no, no, I just studied legit, I call it legit voice, classical voice. But my teacher at the time, she was Eileen Farrell. She was a famous opera star. And I was just so lucky to get into her class. I had no idea who she was, and it wasn't until my father told me. He was like, oh my God, you got into Eileen Farrell's class? Holy cow. And I'm like, great. All right.
Yeah, let's go.
But she was also sang jazz standards. So she was doing that as well. So it was really folk and rock that I leaned toward, and then meeting, college musicians. I got to work with some great college musicians. One of them, John Harrington, who's a guitar player, who's been with Steely Dan for years, and I was in a 10-piece funk band where he was in.
That's pretty cool.
I was in a country band, a weekend country band in Southern Indiana.
Absolutely, yeah.
In the early 80s, we put together, my husband and I, we weren't married at the time, but we put together a new wave punk band, and that was just a blast doing that. That was just so much fun.
There's a lot of creativity that just comes out of like that whole genre in itself, like it's not a specific a specific placement of like intro, chorus, verse.
That's
Chorus.
right.
Yeah,
That's right.
You just do whatever you want.
We got so out to lunch sometimes. I'm telling you, it was great. Yeah. So,
Cool.
doing that, and then other, other recording projects and stuff, and you just do what you feel like doing.
Yeah.
And have fun doing it. If you're not having fun, don't do it anymore.
I say that to anybody all the time. I say it all the time. I just recently said this, like, so how's the podcast going? Like, you guys, you're getting pretty cool guests on there. I'm glad I'm tuning in. I was like, you're gonna make money off of it? I was like, dude, I just want to have fun with this. Like, come on, man. Like, This is my vibe, my industry that I've been doing this for 13 years. So I'm just gonna continue to do it in a way that I'm getting an education out of this as well as others. So I mean, who's benefiting at all? All of us. So whoever tunes in, whoever watches.
That's
That's really cool. I don't want to give away too much of your secrets because, I mean, obviously we're definitely going to...
I don't have any secrets.
Really? No secrets to vocal training at all? No,
I don't think there should be. I really don't think so. I think that, and any of my colleagues that I work with, we share our stuff with each other all the time, especially if we're having an issue with a student and we don't know how to get out of a puzzle, we're going to contact each other and say, hey, what do you do with I mean, no secrets.
Yeah. So the techniques in itself, I mean, does that revolve around breathing, taking care of your vocals, like your esophagus, your diaphragm, health-wise, the range? Like, so how do you really prepare like a student coming on board for, like, say they've been a vocalist for, I mean, especially in our industry, we have vocalists that never take vocal lessons, but they are vocalists, which is perfectly fine. So there's a lot of people that don't do that. So I've
had a lot of students like that are already pros, that are already touring, that are already in bands, and they're like, I've never taken a voice lesson. That's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. And now you get to, understand like the whole form and the artistic value behind everything in itself. So that's pretty cool. So what's the first thing that you really do to, identify your student? Like, do you kind of try to bring out that technique in them?
Yeah, I usually ask, I always ask them in advance to send me any vocal material that they have online and produced, and also raw, and something that I can hear just them into their microphone singing. So I can hear both how they hear themselves processed, how they like to produce themselves, and how they sound, just sitting in their living room. So I can compare the two and hear what they're going after in their produced sound. If they're not getting something close to that in their live and natural voice, I'm going to help them make that closer. I'll ask them if they have any issues. I'll ask them what they love about their voice and what they don't love about their voice. And again, work to bring the stuff that they don't love to something that they like a lot more. I'll ask about their health habits.
I was just going to say, the health habits or habits in general of like doing something that's definitely blocking the next step to progressing your vocals in itself.
Yes, it can. And some people, they're honest. They're like, oh, well, if I don't have, 2 shots of whiskey before I get on stage, I don't get the rasp that I like to. Whatever. I don't, I don't judge anybody. I just listen. It's like, all right, well, if that's what you do, let's see if it's affecting you any other way. And let's see if we can, do something else to balance you. So I don't do judgment as much as teaching them exactly what drinking alcohol is going to do to your voice, what smoking is going to do to your voice. And can you live with that if this happens to you? And if you can, this is your body. This is, your decision. I'm not going to change you, and I'm going to work with what I have here.
Yeah. And the fact is, like, if like, say you are taking shots or you smoke cigarettes, I mean, there's plenty of vocalists that do it, and that's just the life that they live. And it's nothing crazy. I mean, it's no big deal. But the fact is, your instrument is going to disintegrate more than you expect it to in a shorter period of time. That's just what it is, And
you just use the phrase the word that really sums it up. Your instrument is your whole body. It's not just your vocal cords. It's not just what's coming out of here. It's the whole body. And that's what a lot of students don't pay attention to. It's the spinal alignment. It's your headspace. It's, if you were, and things are imprinted. I talk about imprinting a lot. Students will come and they'll be like, I don't know why I always feel like I'm, flat when I go on stage, and I can't get around that. I'm really, tied to that. I feel really weird. And then they might have had an issue in their youth when somebody that they didn't like, maybe have said, man, you sound horrible, you sound flat, and it gets imprinted in you.
Mm-hmm.
And you think that forever whenever you go on stage, so I see a lot of imprinting issues. I think we all have them, actually.
Yeah, the headspace, I mean, the mentality going into it, I mean, if you're already in a bad mindset before you go on stage, like, you're already tricking yourself into thinking that you're not going to, produce a well show, or you're not going to hit the notes that you want to hit, and you kind of take a step back or something. It even happens with me. Like, if I'm in a bad place, there were shows where things just didn't happen the way I did, and I was like, oh, I played such a bad show. But, like, in actuality, you really don't. But vocals is just such a different instrument in itself anyway.
Yes.
But posture has to take a huge role. Like,
well, it does. It does. But, you have to understand. So when I teach, I like to correct the posture. But if you're going to be rocking on stage or in a punk band, you're not going to be like, no,
right?
I mean, rigid. But you can always recorrect yourself, to reset up the instruments. So I always say, the example I usually use is, if I took the neck of a guitar and bent it, how would the guitar sound? Well, it wouldn't sound that good. So think of your spine the same way. If you're doing this, it's going to affect, the vocal cords. So you just want to be aware of things that affect the voice.
And is there like a finite way of warm-ups or any techniques in itself? Have you personally seen different techniques and different warm-ups of that have been implemented over the years? Because I know a few and such, but not all of them, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, you can go online on YouTube and you're going to find 1,000 different warm-ups that teachers will give you for free. And but I like to learn about the student and what they're doing, and then give them a routine that I think works for them, rather than, here, take this program and do this every day, because that's kind of mindless to me. But there are things that I feel that every student should be doing every day, and those are like the lip bubbles, those things.
I love that stuff. Yeah, I do it with my vocalists too, and I'm not even singing. I just do it just to be there with them and stuff.
Yeah, so it's analogous to a sports person when they're warming up, before they do their athletic thing, whatever it is, running or pole vaulting. They're going to stretch their muscles. Yeah, exactly, that too. So they're going to warm up, but then after they're done with their athletic event, they're going to warm down as well. They're going to stretch out the muscles. So you want to just sandwich your day with lip bubbles. If you don't do anything else, just sandwich. You just wake up and do lip bubbles, and before the lip trills, whatever you want to call them, and before you go to bed at night, after you've had your gig, then do lip trills again.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a like a certain amount of time you have to do warm up. Like, if there's no such thing as too much of warming up. You know what I mean?
Well, yes and no.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So like I had a lot of students will think, oh man, I just I warmed up like 45 minutes before my gig, and then my voice got really tired at my gig. I'm like, well, of course, because you just performed for 45 minutes before you actually started singing. So really, you're better off stretching out and doing your exercises after you got up in the morning and your body is awake and your muscles are awake and the blood is flowing in your body. Then do your vocal exercises and whatever, half hour, an hour, whatever you feel like doing, sing your songs. And then before your gig, do like a 5-minute precursor to your gig. So you're just reminding your voice, yeah, we got a gig now. We're going to be singing. So.
Right. Yeah, I mean, especially when you're on tour for months at a time, it's basically has to be explained as a marathon and not a race, because there are going to be days where, I mean, our vocalist did it when we were on Warped Tour, but he just had a couple days of silence just to not talk at all. I mean, and he was drinking tea all the time. I mean, do you have any suggestions of any kind of beverage or food in itself? Like, the common stuff, stay away from cheese, stay away from anything that has a lot of like can build phlegm.
Yes, it can build phlegm, but it doesn't build phlegm in all people, because I asked an associate of mine who's in Italy, outside of Venice, and I said, hey, you guys, you eat a lot of cheese, like, do you tell your students that they shouldn't eat cheese? And he looked at me like I was nuts. He's like, no, So I thought,
eat cheese, whatever.
Yeah, so I thought that was really interesting, that it wasn't an issue for him at all, for his students, and it didn't come up in conversation. So I really wonder, where does that come? So I think it's regional, and I think you just have to know your own body. If you know that something is going to cause phlegm, then avoid it for a good 4 hours before your gig.
Hmm.
And keep in mind too, things like alcohol are going to dry out your vocal cords.
Right.
Caffeine is going to dry out your vocal cords.
Yeah.
So stay away from those if you can.
Right. Yeah.
Like, don't get into the soda habit. I mean, you know what?
No. All the
when
sugar and sodium.
The sugar. Oh man, and
syrup.
the fact is, you can pour a can of Coke in your toilet bowl and clean it. Like, who wants to be drinking that?
No, absolutely not. That just sits in your stomach too. It's like the same thing as eating McDonald's French fries, and that doesn't even like deteriorate when it's. In a closed
that's
container.
right.
Like,
oh, I know.
That documentary opened my eyes as an American. I was like, we need to kind of get into a healthy routine. This is ridiculous.
Absolutely. So you want to have foods that are high in water content. So you want to be drinking a lot of water every day. But it takes a while for it to get to your systemically to your voice. It's not immediate. You take a sip and it's not gonna do anything.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So it takes a while for the hydration to actually get there. So you want to be drinking every day, all day, and stay hydrated. If you're not the type of person that likes to drink water or herbal teas, high water content foods like watermelons and some berries and cucumbers and celery, all of those are high water content. So those are good for you to eat. You usually see that too. I've seen that a lot backstage. Singers will generally ask for watermelon. They love having watermelon. So.
Yeah, and they get creative with sometimes too. I mean, I've seen vocalists that just put a couple berries in their water and just drink that and stuff. Or if it's crushed berries, I mean, like it seems like it looks disgusting, but at the same time, they're just trying to implement a healthy diet to perform at their best.
That's right.
Day. I was like, that's interesting. I've never seen that before. And like, I don't know, it's kind of flavorful, but I'm getting like, some, natural food out of it to kind of, also fuel me for the show and everything. So, I mean,
that's right.
Yeah. So I guess there is no finite way of like,
and you have to know yourself and your body. I mean, I've got, I myself have reflux. I have students with reflux. So you're going to stay away from the acidic foods,
Right.
And
yeah.
Because that's going to feel like crap when you're on stage. If you've just had, a hot pepper before you get on.
And I'm a spicy kind of guy too, and I would love to take singing up so much. I mean, my mother she would used to take vocal lessons, and she would never sing in front of us. I mean, she would like kind of hum, but she was actually pretty good when we were kids. And I'm like, we're like singing. She's like, nah, she just got stage fright. Like the only time she sung was at her sister's wedding, and that was it. And she was like stage fright. Nah, but she was pretty good. I remember her singing when we were kids and such. So I mean, the music background is there with me, but she never really went out of her way to like pursue it. It was just a personal interest for her to do it.
As long as she sang you lullabies and it made you happy.
I'm sure it did. Yeah, I'm sure. I don't remember, but I'm sure it did. You know what I mean? And I'm a good sleeper, so that's probably why I sleep so well.
There you go.
I'm just a heavy sleeper.
I mean, that's it too. I mean, I've got students that just take voice lessons just because they want to. They're not doing anything with it, and that's fine. But they are maybe singing to their babies at home,
Yep.
or they like singing around the house with their kids or with their husband or wife. That's fine.
Yeah, that is fine. I mean, it's just whatever. That's a personal interest. It's a hobby. Some people don't want to do that. Some people just want to naturally do something. I mean, I talked to a couple coworkers who just play instruments just because it's just fun to them. I'm like, absolutely. Like, I'm sick of playing rock band. I want to play a real instrument. I was like, okay, well then pick up a guitar and start playing and start learning. And it builds it gradually. And like, oh, now I want a gig, and it's like, or jam with people. And music in general is so therapeutically pleasing. In general, there was a whole documentary on it. I can't remember what it was called, but they basically took music from. They went into a retirement home and they took music of their interest in general. They wrote. Did you ever see it?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
and it just brought them back to life in that retiring nursing home. It was incredible, and they were so happy. Some of them were crying because it reminded them of the war, like that they were in World War I or World War II. Like they were just brought back the happy moments and such. And I was like, just music has such a powerful impact into the song itself.
It really does, and that is one of the things too. At any age of any student, I will ask them to sing me the first song that they remember singing.
And did you try to like them to build off of that, like not with the song itself, but with other songs?
I observe them as a student when they do it, because a lot of things are going on in the head when they start singing something that meant a lot to them, and I'll hear it in their voice. I'll hear the sensitivity in their voice. I'll hear the happiness in their voice, and then I make a mental note And, when we're working on later material, I'll say, remember when you sang such and such for me, and remember that feeling that you had.
Oh, so that's glorious. And now here's a tricky one. And obviously it's not gonna be tricky for you, but it's tricky for me.
Okay.
I have never, obviously I'm not a vocalist, I never had a problem with it, but I feel really bad for vocalists who have horrific allergies, because sometimes I feel like that is just, it's unattainable to try to, find a solution to do that before you go and perform a gig or such, or it's inevitable to just bypass that. I mean, you could take an allergy pill, but it could still be bad. Have you experienced or have gotten
I have I have seasonal allergies, and so I know what it's like. You get that stuffed up nose, and it feels horrible, and you have the postnasal drip, and that feels horrible. And there are some things that you can, again, hydration is the best thing. I have a former student who's got really severe allergies, so she has to have the air conditioner on all the time. She has to keep the windows closed. She cannot, let any outside influence come in. So again, it depends on the person, and working with your allergist, seeing if you can get something that doesn't dry out the vocal cords but helps you with your allergies. Everybody's different.
It's just I always suggest to anybody, if you're serious about just like, let's say just music in general. I've seen vocalists who have destroyed their vocal cords for singing improperly, or I have seen drummers get into bad habits or guitar players get into bad habits because they're not implementing certain techniques and such. But I mean, that's okay too. I mean, that's their art. But I mean, I feel like there's never anything wrong with reaching out to someone who you can get an education from or learn lessons from, because some people just, they're naturally talented, like you said earlier, and that is true. But there's never enough to learn. Like, you can always keep learning and growing.
Yes, and I feel that with myself. I mean, I'm I'm still learning, and I still feel like, oh my God, I don't know enough. How could I be a teacher? I don't know enough yet. So
there's still so much more to go. Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. So I totally get that, but there was something you mentioned, and I was going to go off on that, but I completely spaced. I just went took a left turn in my brain.
With damaging the vocal cords, maybe. Or...
When if somebody comes to me and they have a very raspy voice, or I hear if I hear their voice cut out and I hear that, I won't give them voice lessons until they go to an ENT and rule out, or an otolaryngologist, until they rule out that there's nothing wrong with their vocal cords.
Right, because if you don't have a diagnosis, you could be doing more damage than you even know. So
correct. Yeah. And I can't see their vocal cords. I can just hear. I can hear things, and I don't know whether it's damage or whether they're just holding a lot of tension and constriction and causing that sound and holding their breath back. So I rule that out first, and then, okay, we can work.
Yeah, that's insane. And you know what it comes from mostly? I've seen it in metal screamers mostly, because they're obviously doing two different, whether they sing and scream or just scream, but in the early 2000s, it didn't seem like we had an education of how to control screaming in itself.
That's right.
And then as we grew older, and their music, became, more successful over time, you would hear or just see in documentaries or just interviews or whatever, but or hear on the music, it's almost completely gone and they're exhausted on stage. So I'm glad that we were able to try to find some kind of solution to, warming up around those vocals as well.
Right.
And I wanted to touch base on this because I think, you and Melissa Cross obviously are probably the most prominent vocal coaches that I know of.
That's insane that you say that, because I just adore her. She is just amazing, so she is on a pedestal, honey.
No, so are you too. You have so much of a great history background. I think she kind of just took on a different genre in itself, and just was able to.
She did. She really focused on it, and she was the first one to do it. You know?
Yeah, because the Zen of Screaming. That's some of the warm ups I heard from that track that I was working with my vocalist when we were doing tours and gigs. Some of it correlates to clean singing or natural singing in itself.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. So how much of a correlation is there? Is there? There's got to be some differences.
Well, No, I mean, you have to know how to sing correctly first
Mm-hmm.
before you're putting any kind of distortion on your voice. I mean, it's kind of like if you're a guitar player, if you play, okay, here's the cursing. If you play shitty and then you put distortion on it, it's going to just sound shitty.
Right,
know?
exactly. Yeah, you have to know
If
how
you
to
if you
perform first.
play well and you put distortion on it, it's going to sound cool.
Yeah,
So
you're
I
right.
would just think of it that way. If you're a good singer and you put distortion on it, you're going to sound cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just never knew that. I mean, it was so weird, like kind of hearing back and using using that whole playlist as a warm up for any show and such. And
Mhm.
I was like, wow, there's a lot of like some of these warm ups are implemented for clean vocals in a sense, but also some of them I never heard before. And then I think she kind of tackles like the way that they help the rasp or the distortion, like you were saying.
Right.
So
Yeah, she does that red rum thing. Yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's like kind of when you sit. We used to do it when we were kids. It was for whatever reason you just and
Oh,
you
yeah,
could do
that's a
that
vocal fry. Yeah.
yeah, and you could do that forever.
Ever.
Like, and
Yeah.
and you piss your parents off. Like they're like, "Would you stop? Would you stop?" I'm like,
Yeah, you'd have conversations.
how long can we do it? How long can we do it, little brother? I don't know. Let's try it. We only have 3 hours to go to South Carolina, so it's like let's just give it a shot.
It's so true.
turn
That
this
is
car
so
around.
true. And but thinking of that, when you think of the vocal fry, you can feel how natural. Some people can't do the vocal fry, and those students that are trying to scream correctly have a hard time because they're starting with constriction anyway. They're trying to do the but they're pushing it. They're doing that.
Yeah, they're forcing it. Correct. Yeah.
And so for me to just get to the basics and get them to do a natural vocal fry and just start drooling, it's for some, it's really hard.
They just don't get in the beginning. What are the challenges that you really face when it comes to students? I mean, is it the self-aware of they can do it, or the bad habits that they have? I mean, there's got
no. I would say the biggest challenge is getting them to realize that they are so very talented, and I can hear the beauty of their voice, and they put the kibosh on it all the time. I hear it all the time. I hear the honesty, I hear the vulnerability, I hear the beauty, and I just want them to be able to hear it.
Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with vulnerability. I mean, that's just
oh God, no, it has to be there.
Yeah, it has to be there. Yeah, you have to feel uncomfortable. If you don't feel uncomfortable, then you're not going to learn from it. It's just like with failing. I mean, I preach this all the time. Like you're going to fail like 50 to 100 times before you're successful once, and like the one success is like way more significant than the failing, obviously. But I don't know. For challenging in itself, I feel like that headspace, going back to it, because that it's all in your mind. Like you can control anything that you want to do in life. I mean, you just have to really kind of take that advantage and put yourself in that right situation to move forward with that gig or move forward with going to the studio, because I have bad headspace when I go to the studio. I get so self-conscious, and I kind of like have to have a ritual now where I kind of just like, we could do a million tracks and you get the right one. I'm like, okay, let's just do that. It's okay. That's what it is. But some people get like that nervousness and such.
But as a pro player, that if you didn't have enough things, I call it having things in your toolbox. If you didn't have enough tips and tricks in your toolbox, if your head is getting in the way, at least you can go, all right, well, I can do this because I know this is going to work. Mm-hmm. And that's what I like to give students too, is a full palette and a full toolbox that they can, get into their own sandbox and play. And if that voice comes in, I'm not worthy, I suck, oh my God, I can't believe I'm singing like that, they can say, all right, well, I can pull this out of the toolbox and let me just work with this, and maybe that'll recenter me again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then they'll feel a little bit more confident, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
now
I can sing.
I can sing. Yeah, it only took so long. Obviously, you working with a piano when you do your, your scales and such. Like, I mean, so are they doing that at home? I mean, I'm sure not all of them have pianos or microphones, but
you could, of course, because of the delay. I can only play like a chord, on the piano, and then I'll say, it'll be an arpeggiated exercise, and they'll have to, do it. And then if I see that they have a hard time reproducing the sound, then I know I need to do some ear training with them. So actually, sometimes it's good if you're not playing along with the student.
How do you speaking of ear training, because I almost completely forgot about that, but how do you enhance that just how do you enhance your ear training itself? Like, I mean, some people don't naturally have it, but
Yeah, simple things I'll do. If I'm working with a singer-songwriter, I'll give them maybe licks that they have to work on, or I'll ask them to make up a lick. I'll give them like a chord,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll say, okay, just sing a note that you hear in that chord, and they'll sing a note that they hear, and I'll say, sing another note that you hear in the chord. I'll try to have them build it. And then I'll say, okay, write a lick, write a line that fits in that chord. And then we'll try to do it in all keys with them.
That's an interesting, not technique. That's an interesting exercise. I like that.
It's just fun. It's just getting them to trust their own ears. I'm not making them learn like, oh yeah, this is a flat 5 or this is whatever. I'm not making them do that. I'm making them trust their ears.
Yeah,
because
I do have
a lot
an ear
of
for
them
some
don't.
things. Yeah, I have ears for some things. Like I can identify. So if I hear, I don't know, if I hear like a rhythm in a song or a chorus of a song, I can just hear the relevance to something else. I was like, oh, this is in the same key. Like that's all I can kind of do, and that's like basic training. But I've always wanted to, learn more to that aspect because I would like to, produce songs that are structurally, fantastic for, I don't know, whatever we're trying to write. So,
right. Yeah. So it's just expanding. Again, it's learning. It's just expanding your palette and learning some new colors, for the sound. I don't expect them to use these things in any of their songs, but I'm just getting them used to hearing differently than just, major minor chords and one. I mean, like there's so many basic chords that are used in pop music just to stretch the ears out a little bit.
Right. Yeah,
helps them to make their original music sound a little more interesting when they're writing with basic, chord changes.
Yeah, because I use polyrhythms all the time as good warm-ups or good exercises in a sense, but you can technically, like you said, use them in the songwriting. But for exercising and to try to, doing doubles with the ghost notes, trying to get that accent. Something like that. The paradiddles. I mean, that's the favorite drumming paradiddle ever. Once I teach someone a paradiddle, they don't stop. And I'm like, all right, we got to teach you something new, dude, because you're already going around the whole drum set. Like, we need to do something else. How far out for video chatting do you have students for? Like, do you video chat? Like, do you have a couple kids like out in the Midwest?
London,
or students out in the Midwest. London. Really? That is so phenomenal. And they have the accent and everything. I'd totally be stoked about that.
Yeah. No, I taught a student in Russia. I've taught a student in France. Anywhere. I don't care where. Australia. I don't care where you live. We're not apart from anybody anymore.
It's a universal language. So.
Yep. Thailand.
Oh, wow.
Japan. Yeah.
Maybe.
So it's just getting the time. Sometimes Thailand, what is it, like a 12-hour difference? So, like sometimes it's like I'll get up early for them, 7 a.m. because it'll be like 7 p.m. their time.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah,
because you're just like trying to like open your eyes, like, all right.
Well, I get up early anyway, so it works.
Yeah, me too. Now I'm a 4 a.m. kind of guy for my job, so I don't mind it. I mean, I have the whole day to myself. Obviously, we're doing this too, which is like so fucking cool.
Potty mouth on your end now.
It eventually came out. I mean, I think YouTube would not like it in the first 10 minutes, but towards the end, I think it's okay. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know how they work yet. And the one students that I kind of wanted to take interest in because I don't know how the relationship was built, but you also, being a New Jersey native, you have worked with Frank Iero at the time when My Chemical Romance was disbanded, or AKA on a hiatus. And his dad taught me how to teach drums, so it's really cool that we have kind of like a similar, correlation between, him and I met him a couple times.
Right. 3 degrees of separation.
3 degrees separate. And I'm in Pennsylvania, so I'm a little bit far out. But they're just, they're all great, talented musicians, and they're great, humble people. I mean, there's a couple, how was that experience working with him? I mean, did he reach out to you on a
Yeah.
limb, and yeah.
Yeah, no, he was recommended to me by a friend and a guy in town who's a musician who owns the guitar store in town and school, and Sean Reams, who's great. So if anybody is in Northern Jersey and needs a guitar teacher, call up Sean. But he recommended Frank, and Frank came, and we started working. And keep in mind, I really wasn't listening. Sorry, I wasn't listening to My Chemical Romance. They weren't on my radar.
Well, now they
are. So to me, he was just a really sweet young man, married with kids, and actually, I would give him exercises that he had to do with his kids when he went home.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, they're starting a band, I think, right now. Like that, he posts like that. I think Cherry's playing bass or Lily's playing bass and Miles is playing drums. Like they're all so musically inclined. It's such a cute family. But so how was that process? Because he never really sang, and that's a perfect example of somebody who really wanted to take it to the next level and get that mentorship. Because he would do backups when My Chemical Romance was in their early days, up until they disbanded or hiatus, however you want to identify it. And then he doing
approached
his
it like an instrument. He was serious. He approached it like an instrument. He came in and he's like, "This is what I have, and what can I do, and how can I make it better?" There was no BS in the lesson. It was like, let's get to work now.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was a pro musician. It was great. It's great to work with somebody like that because there's no head stuff in the way.
Right.
Like he knew what he wanted to do. He knew he was here and he wanted to get there. What do I do? So.
Yeah, and his whole family is like that too. I mean, so it's just it's really nice to see that he took it to the next level, because he released so many projects so much shortly after or while working with you in itself, because he just kept releasing music, and it was great tunes, great punk rock tunes. Like, it just totally his vibe and such. So it's cool that like he was able to get a comfortable mentor on his belt, because sometimes people feel uncomfortable in the beginning. Like, I remember when I started playing drums, like with his dad taught me to play drums. Like, I was a little uncomfortable because I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. But once he started kind of like feeling my vibe, I was like, okay, let's go. And then anything he gave me, I'm just like, I want to learn that. What's next? And he's like,
right,
damn it.
right. Yeah. If you go to a teacher with a fearless attitude, even if on the inside you're panicking and you're going, oh my God, what am I doing here? Try to impart, I call it impartial observation. That was what my teaching mentor used to say to me. You're going to have all these voices in your head. Like, I can do it. I can't do it. I kind of suck. I kind of am great. All these voices are going to be in your head. So have the impartial observer, just the person that's standing there going, all right, let's get to work. Let's see what happens. And so I think that's the best way to approach going to a lesson, is like those judging voices are going to be there. Let them be there, but you don't have to say them out loud. Just observe them. Know that they're part of you. Say hello. Hello, insecurity. How you doing? Hello, pride. What's going on?
Yeah, it's like, oh, I didn't think we were going to be in the same room together, but I guess we're going to figure this out.
That's exactly what it is. And they're you can't will them away. You can't wish them away, but you can learn to live with them because they're part of you.
And that's got to be the most refreshing thing too.
It is, because you'll find out that it might be the insecure part of you that's pulling out the artistic identity that you really needed to find in the first place.
Yeah, and especially when you have that student that wants to come in and learn like right off the bat. I mean, it's just like, okay, let's get to work. You want to learn everything that I know? Here you go. Let's go. I mean, like, when I teach a couple, I have two students. Obviously, I can't see them right now, unfortunately. But the one is starting to lean towards like a 21 Pilots, like a pop rock kind of, drumming, or Taylor Swift or something. And I'm like, yeah, dude, absolutely. And I try to focus around that in itself, because that's what he's interested in. But he'll take it, and we're doing weekly. One day, one lesson, half hour, every week on like a Tuesday, like 4:30. But he just takes it and he rolls with it. He's like, what's next? I'm like, wow, you're really getting this, I'm like, this kid reminds me of, man, I gotta really step it up and start giving him some difficult things. Yeah, that does happen. A little joke that I have with my colleagues is, I can sing 2 to 4 bars of anything, but don't make me sing the whole damn song. And that's what you get. That's the preview you get. Okay.
Right.
That's it. Yeah. No, that's
Right.
so cool. Do you all, because we met at launch conference briefly. I walked by you, and I don't know.
I know, and I missed going there. I was so sad that they had to, postpone it this year with everything going on. But they are going to do it virtually at the end of this month.
Yeah, so Poeta is a part of that as well, with either being
Good.
live or whatever. Jeremy is probably one of the most humble and intelligent
He's great.
Music,
He's so great.
music business influencers that I know of. He's just so, having conversations with him is like sitting in a college,
Yes.
class and getting this just this whole vibe of how he goes about the philosophy of the music
And
business. And
he's
it's
old
insane.
he's old school.
Yeah,
He
is
believes
very
in the
old school.
artist.
Mm-hmm.
He's like the way it used to be. He
Yeah.
just believes in the artist and gives his whole heart and soul to the artist.
Yep.
So cool.
And he creates that. And that's, like I said, that's how I met you. I don't know if I said this earlier in the podcast, or I know I said it briefly before we got on live. But when I walked by you doing a panel in the middle of the Marriott, you said that, the students that want to come to me, they want to sound like this one. They said, no, you got to sound like yourself. I'm like, oh, I got to listen to her because she's so right. I was like, Kevin, come here. You got to listen to her. She knows what she's talking about. Because that's what I was told, too. She's told me, just be yourself, man. You have all these influences. You have all these different, idols that you want to, play along to. But just be yourself. Be creative. Take from that, get a little, improvise a little bit. Or,
Yeah. I mean, that's what we want to hear.
Right.
We don't want to hear you imitate somebody. You can when you're 12. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're starting out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. Just to get a little taste of it. I want to be, this. And it's okay. And then you're that for a month. And then you want to be something else for a month or something. Our brains are sporadic at that point or whatever.
Yes. And they should. And I love it. It's they come in one week and it's Christina Aguilera. And the next week it's Idina Menzel from Broadway show. It's okay, let's go. Let's do it.
Sure. Why not? But find yourself too. Yeah. Self-discovery is a big thing in art. In itself. It doesn't matter what it is. But it's music or directing or content creating. I've met so many people who just they're so far out as as a full-time job for them too, and I greatly appreciate what they do, because it's man, they made it. I'm so stoked for them, and they are themselves. I see nothing like it. So there's this band called A Will Away that I had on the podcast on episode 20. They're all DIY. They've been DIY for a while, but now they have a team behind them, and they did the old school way too, and they just grinded. They just played shows all the time, and that's not the thing anymore. In order to get on a tour, you have to have Spotify numbers, and booking agents have to be well, how much can you
I wonder,
pull on this?
do you think that's going to change because of everything that's going on?
With what's going on, I would say so, but not at the same time, because we haven't found what the next step of being touring is. This pandemic is definitely hurting the music industry in full effect. One, for the venues in itself, because they're not going to be able to, you can't sell alcohol, you can't have shows.
Yeah.
We're going to be the last that's going to be opening in 2021 probably. There's no way I see it resuming anytime soon.
Right.
And the other problem is too, when it does come back, the bigger bands are going to get the first taste of everything, unless you have this underground scene, because it's just it's more the mid-tier bands that I fear for the most, because the underground bands, they have a community already in local or regional. The mid-tier, it's that's going to be a competition just to even get a tour going and get paid.
Yeah.
You can only have a room cap of say if the room cap is 3,000 people, you can only have half that, not even, and the bigger bands are going to get it first, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. But it's the CDC. We're trying to be as safe as we can, so it's just a shame. But will it change? I think it will. I just don't know what it is. I mean, so launched 2016, I went, and 17, and that was the biggest leap with the Spotify numbers. It used to be play shows, release good music, which is still the same thing, but get on the road. Now it's well, if you want to get on the road, you have to show your Spotify analytics and how much it's reaching out there and what counties are listening to you, and is it worth you bringing out there to bring a draw. It's very specific. I
know, and it's so sad to me, because that can tend to take away from the artistry of the person. Yeah. Because they tend to, then they go, well, I have to do this so I get the numbers, and I have to sing like this so I get the, and it's
it's a blessing and a curse. You just the internet you can use to your advantage, obviously. If you do a lot of studying in general with what you're involving yourself in, whether it's a YouTube channel, whether it's your music. There's ways in going about marketing. There's ways in going about creating great content. If you don't have that thought process, it is a little bit harder. But with studying or getting a mentor in itself, with whatever it is, your craft, your music business, because that's what Cheech was for me. Cheech was the first thing he said to me when I was like, I told him I said I want to be a full-time musician, like I want to be in a band, in the original band. He's like, don't do it. And like obviously I'm doing it, but and he said the same thing to Frank, and look at him, but super successful. But he said there's the music and there's the music business, and they're two completely different things, and that stuck with me. And I studied the music business entirely. I'm like, this is what you got to do. So it things will evolve over time, but it is a shame. I don't like the whole Spotify thing. I wish you could just, there's still old school ways of doing it where you, let's say a Willow Way, they're from Connecticut, they come play in New Jersey and we host them. Well, we're going to trade off that show when we go to Connecticut, and they're going to host us with probably the same room cap in the DIY setting. So some of those old school ways of going it, but they were so old school. They were just touring all the time, which is so cool. That's a dream of mine, but maybe one day. But I talked to Matt, and he did say I kind of brought this up earlier before we started live. He's using this lubricant from Whole Foods. It's called, Singer Saving Grace. And what is your take on something like that would do for a vocalist of anybody?
Well, it's anything that you ingest is only going to touch your throat. It's not going to touch your vocal cords at all. Because when you spray something in, it's just coating your throat. So if you have a sore throat, it's going to soothe it, but it's not going to do anything at all to your vocal cords. Because when you swallow anything, food or beverage, your vocal cords are closing. The false vocal cords next to them flap over, and the epiglottis flaps on top of that, so that everything can pass down your esophagus. So it doesn't even get near them. The only thing that touches your vocal cords is steam. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Otherwise,
gotta be the most effective. Yeah, that's why when you sing in the shower, you sound like a glorifying angel.
So you could save a lot of money and not get this stuff, and just
just
boil some water and go.
Just inhale it. Get a mask and just just pour hot steam. Well, not hot, but like steam into your vocals.
Just steam. Just steam.
Yeah, it doesn't be hot. Yeah, it says it soothes and moistens and is a lubricant that's overworked the throat tissues. And then it says a blessing for anyone singing, screaming, cheering, shouting, or I don't know.
Well, and if somebody, let's put it this way: if somebody is singing incorrectly or screaming incorrectly, they're going to get a sore throat. So you shouldn't be getting a sore throat if you're doing it correctly. So you wouldn't need that stuff. You would be tired, but you shouldn't be sore.
Yeah, there's a lot of roots that are involved with it as well, and it's gluten-free, which is good. But also it says caution: do not use during pregnancy. So ladies, if you're a vocalist and you're pregnant, please do not use this product at all. Like
you'll be screaming at labor anyway. So
unless if you're all med up. You know what I mean? I don't know. It depends. You want to do the natural thing? That's whatever you want to do. You want to do it in the bathtub?
Trust me, even before the meds kick in, it's painful.
I'm sure. I'll never know that experience, and I'll never put an opinion on it whatsoever. That's crazy. So it's just that, like I said, people find different ways of trying to touch up their vocals, or it seems like this is just a lubricant in itself, but it has nothing to do.
You know what? If it works,
right, but. It should be the only option, in a sense. That's how I feel about it. Like, there's other ways of going about it. If that's what you do, fine. But I feel like there's always going to be a different way of, taking advantage of warming up. Yeah.
I mean, it's like a rabbit's foot. If it works for you to have one in your pocket, then have one. And if it makes things better, magnetic bracelet when you're playing golf, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like a weight or something. It just kind of gets you balanced. I don't know. Which those are real things, yeah.
Right. And I'm not going to argue with somebody, if that works for them, keep doing it.
Right. Yeah. Whatever you can tailor to yourself that, works for your best.
Because it's not hurting you. No. It's not hurting you to take that stuff.
It did say, do not. Unless you're. Yeah, it was like don't apply 12 times in a day or something. I was like, oh, I guess that's not good. Like, just don't overdo it. Just spray once or twice and then you're good. I don't know.
Right.
That's crazy. Yeah, I hope to see you more at conferences and such. I mean, Launch is such a great conference in itself, and the panelists are just so so well rounded with knowledge. It's just incredible.
No.
So anybody can be there. Like,
And they're so open and loving and willing to talk to anybody for as long as you need to talk about your craft.
yeah.
It's like, because I've been to so many other ones where, the talking heads are on the stage and then they go and they line up behind a table and people like a wedding line, they march down and they shake their hand and that's it. You can't talk.
Yeah, now it's different. Now it's gonna be all over online, but I'm hoping we can resume things later on in the future.
Yeah.
Have you involved yourself in a lot of those conferences or meetups? I mean, because that's good for building communities in general.
It is, but I'll tell you, I just loved Jeremy's scene so much that I was just hoping he would expand and go to other cities with Launch.
One day.
Yeah.
One day.
Yeah, but look, my door is always open. I'm available to talk to anybody about voice. My consultations are free. It's a 15-minute consultation. If I'm really engaged in a conversation, I'm not going to cut you off at the 15-minute mark, and that's free consultation. So.
Yeah. And I appreciate you coming on and talk to me about, how you go about your techniques and everything as well, because this was like such a refreshing conversation in itself. And it was great talking to you since
Pleasure.
launch. Yeah, the pleasure's all mine. What are ways to reach out to you in general to possibly take interest of, having you as a mentor in general?
Well, you can go to my website, zuketunes.com, zuketunes.com, zuketunes.com. And that I'm on, Instagram, Zuketunes. You just have to type that in and you're going to find me. And there's a contact. Yeah, there's a contact there. Or if you want to just go ahead and book a consultation, go ahead and book a consultation and we can take it from there. Even if you just want to say, hi, I'm a singer. Check out my stuff. I'll check it out. Check out I check out everybody's songs. Everybody. I don't care what your bag is. I love listening to original music.
Oh, the original music is just so endearing to who they are as a person. That I totally agree with that 100%. Like,
yeah,
so
especially when it's before it's so over processed. I really hear them, and I just love that.
No, me too. But hey, listen, I thoroughly am honored to have you on the podcast. I'm going to be hoping to talk with you more soon. Actually, like, I've wanted to I wanted to take vocal lessons for so long, so I know there's
on the house
be
for you.
A text message. Oh, absolutely, 110%. Like, I'm way over 100. Like, I'm texting you as soon as I'm ready to take vocal lessons. Like, it's just
right on.
It's just something I wanted to do for so long. There's just a lot of control that I can have. I can kind of hear it in myself, so I'm sure you'll be able to mold me in a lot of ways that I won't be able to. No, it'll be a good time. It'll be a really good time.
It'll be fun.
But thank you for taking the time to do this. It was a
Thank
you. Pleasure of mine, honestly. And then I'll put all of your contact information in the description in YouTube as well as other platforms that I put out there. And then this episode will go out on Monday, on July 6th. So
excellent. Well, have a great weekend. I hope you're barbecuing tomorrow.
Yeah, you too as well. Enjoy your holiday.
Thank you.
You and your husband and your family. So and just stay safe, please. It's pretty bad out there. I'm not even going to the beach or anything. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying home.
No, that's what we're doing, but that's just fine. That's just fine.
Totally cool with hanging my family. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
But okay, so I'm going to sign off. Thank you for everybody for tuning in, and we're going to put all of her information to contact her as a mentor in the description. So thank you again, Zuke. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I had a blast.
Thank you.